So there was a request made on, or a question asked on how I get the texture on some of the rotors after I cut them. The only way I do this is if I'm using a cheap pad that won't stop squeaking. You know, some of those $20 pad sets from the parts store, or maybe there's room in the budget for brakes and rotors, but there's not room in the budget for expensive stuff and you use cheap stuff. Whenever I go with a set of cheap pads, a lot of times they come back, a couple hundred miles later squeaking, and the customers complain about them. I learned this trick from a wholesale mechanic back in the day, and as well as a journeyman tech that had been in the field for 35 years, that he changes the cut of the rotor face. He'll cut it normal, but add a finish to it to help really bite into the face of the brake pads. Now, this is not a professional way to do this at all, but some people like the way it looks, or they might have a show car or something like that and they want to get that finish and they don't drive it a lot. Maybe it's a trailer queen, but they like the way it looks with all the shiny, the aggressive lines coming out of it, because it makes it look like some kind of sport cut. You know what? I may even have to turn the comment section off on this video because I already know what's going to happen. But sometimes you have to go to the extent of doing stuff like this to make cheap stuff work. Earlier today, when I had that lady that came in here with that mechanic hack job, I had to get her back on the road, and I had to get the surface of those old pads, the cheap pads that she had put on there that were not put on there correctly at all, and didn't have a lot of money to do the job right. She wanted the stuff that was on there to work but be safe. So I went through the vehicle and I showed you guys the video, so there's a reference there before anybody says any kind of trash talk about that. You can go back to the video and look, but here is how I get that cut to fix cheap shit, to actually make brakes quiet and stuff when the standard stuff doesn't work. That's it. It's not a professional way to do it. It's a safe way to do something to stop brakes from making noise. If you're not in the budget for expensive stuff and you're trying to reuse old stuff, it's just cheap quality. So this is just an old junk heavy-duty transit rotor that was in for service, and I just grabbed it off the ground and I picked a real heavy grit to get through some of this rust on the edges, and I'm just using this for demonstration purposes. Normally I use something really light, like an 80 to 120 grit. This is really low. This is like a 25 grit, really aggressive, just so I could get through this rust and through the shininess of the surface. Normally it would pop out a lot more if the rotor was cut first, but you get the point. When you do this type of finish on the surface, you want to make sure you have a fresh cut rotor first before you do this. This is just me demonstrating the position of which I hold my hand and how I use the actual angle grinder to actually do this. It's not necessarily the greatest idea, because if you turn your lathe on the slowest setting and you just let it nice even cut, that's going to be your best bet. But if you're looking for a specific textured finish, this is a way that guys like to take their vehicles and just make them look a little different, help cut and break in that rotor a little bit more. Some people think that this will actually cause noise. This actually reduces a lot of the noise, especially on cheap brake pads. So now I'm flipping over to the other side, the shiny side, to give you kind of a little bit of a demonstration on exactly how I hold it on the other side as well. I just start on the bottom and I just work my way straight out and kind of to the angle. Just nice and even, hold it there. You see how it's kind of taking off the galling, the shininess of the surface. And now I'm going to stop it, show you what it looks like. And you can see how some of that texture is now starting. Now if this rotor was cut first, you would only need to do that one time. But you could do it several times right here and make that finish even deeper and more aggressive looking. But anyway, that's how I do it when cheap stuff is being used and I need to make it work.